Yes.
Brilliant. So you are all very welcome. It's fantastic to be here in person with everybody. And Tomas, I think your first event, the first BITC event in person in over 2 years. So maybe I'll make a comment on that in a moment. Huge amount has happened in the last couple of years. And I would start, I think, by saying, just acknowledging the work that business and the community have done in assembling us all and marshalling us all into this discussion and into this room. It was great to hear your remarks this morning on the radio. I've already been to a meeting where you were quoted and commented on. And I think what was the topic of the discussion was, in particular, how challenging the talent environment is that we face today, and how important it is that we find ways to ensure that we are accessing all of the talent that's out in the marketplace, and thinking about how we adopt our organisations to facilitate their success in our businesses. So I'm sure part of the topic of discussion today. But over the last few years, there's been a huge amount of change since we last got together. Obviously, the pandemic. I suppose the thing that is most significant for us now is the atrocities in Ukraine, and as a result of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And that's something that is in all of our minds, and in particular, I suppose, as we think about, I think with this group in particular, how we can support those that are coming to Ireland, how we can support them in getting access into our businesses. Because ultimately, for anybody coming to a new country, either as an immigrant or an emigrant, or as an immigrant, is access to work. That's what really makes a difference to people's freedom of choice. But I think what we see a little bit through what's happened in Ukraine is the collapse of multilateralism, which started as a discussion with Brexit. And what we're seeing as a result of that is where we make choices. And I think certainly if I was to compare the choices that we have made in Ireland to the choices being made in other jurisdictions, I feel really proud of the choices that we're making. I feel really proud of how as a country we're finding our way through the chaos of the political environment globally. And I feel really proud to be part of this group. We've done a huge amount, I suppose, I would say, and I feel comfortable sitting here in front of this esteemed group of experts in the area of inclusion. We've done a lot, in particular of note in the recent year. We've launched our gender pay gap report, which is about holding ourselves to account. For us, and I think for me in particular, measurement is incredibly important. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it, you can't report it, you can't identify what's working, what's not working. It's not about beating oneself up. I think just being clear on where one stands is really important, and identifying then the strategies and tactics that can help to adapt the position that we're in is also really important. Our human capital group within the business have supported business in the community as the knowledge partner in this report. And their work is really working with organisations to think through, well, how do we adapt our business to support a much more inclusive working environment? But it is our first in-person event, and I suppose, Tomas, I wanted to mark it in a particular way. I felt to make it significant and consistent with you and with your organisation. I suppose in that regard, we're going to plant a tree for you, but actually we're going to plant a tree for everybody who has turned up this morning. And so if you join virtually, I'm really sorry. You don't get a tree. But it's an organisation that we partner with Home Tree, and I just think it's a great business, and just wanted to maybe to make that gesture. So thank you very much for the opportunity to host everybody here today.
Super, and thank you very much, Harry, for hosting us this morning. And I don't know where I should be looking, but I want to say a big good morning to everybody that's joining us virtually as well, and to the people in the room. What a fantastic opportunity, to see people that we have seen on screens for the last 2 years. And let's hope everything goes well. We have an amazing production team with us, so I'm sure it's going to be amazing. So just before we start, we have a packed agenda. I won't go through it, but you're going to hear a lot about this journey to meaningful inclusion in the workplace, different perspectives. We're going to launch our first report with a first baseline on where we are on this journey to inclusion within the Elevate Pledge. And then I'm going to have the privilege of talking to you about our newest initiative, which is our Traveller Employment Programme. So just a bit of housekeeping for those of you that are very active on social. There is a hashtag, of course, hashtag Elevate Pledge, and you can tag us at BITC Ireland. For those of you that are online, there's closed caption accessibility, so there is going to hopefully pop up something in the chat giving you the instructions to log into it. We're going to have a bit of Q&A for both in-person and virtual attendees. For in-person, you know what to do, and for virtual attendees, please use the Q&A function and the chat box to submit your questions, and we'll take it from there. So I don't want to take much time, but the framing as to why are we here, I guess it's Business in the Community has just published a new 3-year strategy, and this strategy is very much about our ambition, which is a low carbon economy and an inclusive society where everyone thrives. And it's very much about the role of business in making that change and that transformation and that transition happen. Last year, we organized a forum. It was called the Sustainability Revolution, and I had the privilege of asking 5 CEOs if we needed a revolution, and some were saying, well, I'm not sure. I think Harry's words are pretty clear as to the fact that maybe we won't call it revolution, but it is a revolution that it's happening. Our focus is on 3 areas: on responsible business, on low carbon and nature positive, and on inclusive workplaces and thriving communities. We're going to talk a lot about that today. Over the last 20 years, we have been working on inclusion through some of our exceptional employment programs, and the Elevate Pledge, which my colleague Linda O'Sullivan will explain more about. It's bringing together that expertise, that perspective that we have of working on the front line with the challenges that businesses face. So, one of the key elements of Elevate is leadership. And I'm going to start with a conversation around leadership. So I'm delighted that the 2 co-chairs of our social inclusion group, Sinead Patton, Chief Financial and Commercial Officer at Veolia in Ireland and the Regional Director of Veolia in Northern Ireland, and very proud to say a member of the board of Business in the Community, and Harry Goddard, CEO Deloitte, are with me this morning. So let's start the conversation. Sinead, I might start with you, if that's okay, because you have personally been involved in this journey with us since its inception. The question that everybody is probably asking is, why is this a CEO issue? Why is this in your to-do list?
Well, good morning, everyone. I think Harry mentioned it there earlier, is in relation to scarce resources and the talent in Ireland. Do you know what I mean? There is a scarcity of resources. Everyone is feeling it at the moment. In Veolia, like we seem to continuously have about 50 or 60 vacancies within our organisation, and you go out to the marketplace and you try to get the resources, and there's just not as many applicants coming in applying. And to me, the key benefit of inclusion and diversity is you are widening that resource pool. And for me, we need to look as organisations, is there structures or processes in place that are preventing applicants coming through? You know, that they're not getting to the table even to have an interview with us. And so as we also, we look wider. Veolia is a global organisation, and we look to our network because we want to fill those resources. We want people working in Ireland, and we'll go wider, we'll go further afield. But then Ireland Inc. also has to look at their processes. We need to make sure we're agile and flexible, trying to get visas for people. We're almost losing employees as we're trying to get them into Ireland. We had a successful candidate, and it took 6 months to get a visa. And this is just too long. And then we have other people that are in that process, and we'll end up losing people. So for me, it's really important that diversity and inclusion is on the CEO's agenda. It needs to be part of their strategies, and we all have a part to play. Do you know what I mean? But we have to have the buy-in from the top. But to me, it's access to resources. It's And there is a wide variety and diversity, and that collective intelligence, that innovation of ideas that you will get from a wide spectrum of people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different experiences, different skill sets. So for me, it's a CEO issue that we all need to embrace, and everyone in this room has a part to play. And I'm really passionate about, sorry, I hit my mic, really passionate about diversity and inclusion. I can talk all day about it. I know I'm not going to be allowed to, but I will be looking for everyone to really think, do you know what I mean? But lead from the top.
Of course. Harry, you're nodding, so I take it that there's some alignment in terms of some of the challenges in your to-do list?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I think Sinead made some great points. I think the first thing is it's a business imperative. Ireland's proposition in the world economy is as a talent proposition. It's no longer a tax proposition. I think for us, for me as the CEO of the business, the strategic issue for us is, are we optimizing the available talent in the marketplace, and what is it that we're doing to ensure that we do that? Because if I look inside our business, while we continue to not fully reflect what's happening in our society, we're not optimizing our ability to reach into the talent market. So for me, it's a CEO issue, I think, for three reasons. One is it's a brand Ireland characteristic. Two is it is such an existential issue, I think, for the viability of the business in order to ensure that we have a successful and vibrant business into the future. And the third is, and this is a bit more nuanced, if I look at our business is 170, we're 177 on the 24th of April this year. And but if I look at our business and if I looked at the population within our organization over that time frame, it is changing significantly. But it's the last population, it's the older population, the previous population that created the processes and the structures that we have internally. Not just because that's who they were and that's what they did. And we've got to constantly challenge ourselves that actually the way in which we are organised internally, the processes that we have, even some of the cultures and behaviours that we have are consistent with an organisation that is intended to be more inclusive, that wants to accommodate a broader population of backgrounds and perspectives and points of view than that which created the business that we have today. So it's those three reasons really, it's why it's on my agenda.
Yeah. And what about the client interface? Are you seeing more, and to both Sinead and Harry, are you seeing more interest or demand or expectation from clients when it comes to this?
I mean, for sure. I mean, we have clients, and I can tell you, we need to ensure we turn up looking like they look up. I mean, like we need to turn up that they like looking like they do. Absolutely. And clients have got different degrees of explicitness about this, but you know, the concept of turning up with a single gender team, for example, just isn't acceptable. I mean, and there are clients who clearly absolutely wouldn't accept it. Right. So you know, for us, and it kind of goes a little bit to the business case. I sometimes hear when we talk about gender in particular, you know, there's well, what about the men? So, well, I can tell you, the men need to ensure that they have diverse teams, because if they don't and they turn up to the clients, they're not going to be successful. So they need to ensure that they have colleagues and peers, as well as within their teams, a level of diversity that reflects the markets in which we operate. It's hugely important.
Okay. Sinead,
I suppose just to add to that,
please.
So while it is clients and customers are important, I think society and employees are also demanding it. You know, they are looking for something different. When you go in now, and like when we're interviewing within Veolia, they want to come to work with Veolia because of our sustainability or green agenda, but they also want to know, well, have you got an inclusion strategy? So society is also looking for more, and employees are asking for more, which is great, because then it also puts the pressure on companies also to do more.
Yeah. And can you give me a sense, Sinead, of what sort of issues or initiatives, when you're looking, because it's such a massive agenda, what are you prioritizing, or what is the top sort of range of actions that you're looking in Veolia when it comes to advancing inclusion?
So from a Veolia perspective, I'm really proud of what Veolia is doing, and we have lots of initiatives. And like I say, it has to be led from the top, and it has to become part of your strategy. So diversity and inclusion and sustainability are big parts, or key parts of the strategy pillars within Veolia. And we've also recruited an inclusion lead, because I think you need someone to champion it within your organisations as well. And therefore we have different initiatives that are all supported by our top management that to drive the agenda forward. But one particular example that I would like to share, because I think it's very powerful, and it's videos that we have launched during, and what we do during the calendar then is we celebrate different events, because we are a diverse culture, we have different backgrounds, and we celebrate that throughout the year. But what we did was what not to say videos within Veolia, and these were conversations that we had with our employees, and things that people have said throughout the years and felt that it was okay to say, but actually how a person felt when they heard that message. And these were recorded, and then they were launched. We launched one with Black Lives Matters, and then we launched one in relation to International Women's Day. And they're very powerful messages, because people could think within your organisation, oh well, it's just banter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're just talking, but you have to really realise the impact that you're having on people. And suppose the other thing that I would encourage everyone is, if you see that happening within your organisation, just don't think, well, that's banter. That is having an impact on people, and make people feel more included, and make sure that we are doing that.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I love the idea of the what not to say. And I think it's one of the great things about Elevate is that there's a lot of these resources being shared amongst all the signatories, which is at the end of the day the really interesting part of it. Harry, you joined recently the Elevate project. Why join a collective? What's the point of being part of this group of companies? What drove you to get involved, not only as co-chair but as our knowledge partner, which is fantastic?
I think a couple of things. I think I think particularly in my role, you spend a lot of time. You can spend a lot of time in your own head thinking about the sorts of things you'd like to try to evolve and develop in the organisation. And when you take an agenda like this, this is an agenda of change. So the more support that you can get to help you think through what that change might look like, how to advocate for it, the sorts of things that others are doing. We don't have the golden truth on what will be successful in tackling this in our organisation. It's a topic that's for our business globally, and we've 350,000 people worldwide. It is a really significant topic for us. But that which works in North America won't necessarily work in Ireland. But what works for Veolia in Ireland might work for Deloitte in Ireland. And I think it's that sharing of expertise, that sharing of expectations. And if we all continue to, I think, adopt a consistent mantra about trying to ensure that we look like the societies in which we operate, that resonates. And it resonates not just with the people whom we want to employ, who we want to attract to the country. I think that's a big topic for us. I think Ireland is distinctive in being an open and inclusive working environment. I think for us to continue to develop that is really important. But that we also have expectations that we can set of each other. And I think there's some really great insights that came from the work in pulling together this inaugural report, particularly around data. And I'm sure it'll be a topic later on, but I think trying to get people together who we're all trying to achieve the same thing, but how do we find our way through the friction that we're encountering in our organisations trying to get to that goal? And what's the advice and support that we can give to each other? I think very practical things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sinead, can I ask you about the famous data challenge? Because clearly it's something that will come up quite a lot during the conversation this morning. Can you give us a sense of what is the challenge around the data, and have you seen anything that has inspired you in terms of ways of addressing disclosure, voluntary disclosure, to get more into the granularity that we need around this?
I suppose the key thing that was coming out in relation to the data, and we also had that within Veolia, is what are we actually recording within our systems? Do you know what I mean? And there's a certain amount of information that is readily accessible. Do you know what I mean? But then you also have the challenge of confidentiality in relation to information, and people willing to share that information, even if it is aggregated. So we had good data, as you see, in relation to the report in terms of gender, age, nationality, pay. Do you know what I mean? And it was great that so many of the companies could share that information. But you can significantly see where we have a gap in relation to information, and that's where you do need voluntary disclosure. And I think all of us then need to work within our organisations on how can we get people comfortable, and this is part of it. How do we get people comfortable saying something in relation to their background, that they're not going to be ridiculed in relation to it, it's not going to be held against them. Yeah. So that is the challenge that we all have to face, and we have to get people confidently willing to share that information for the greater good so that we can move forward. Yeah. And as you say, as everyone said, it's a baseline report. It is a great start. When I started off on this journey with BITC and all the subgroup members, it was the challenge always, well, what are we trying to achieve in relation to this? How are we going to get a baseline? How are we going to measure? And how are we going to move forward? And through the fantastic work of BITC and the subgroup, we've got there with the first report, and you've got something to work on and to push it forward. But we really have to get people comfortable sharing the information, because as you say, it's voluntary disclosure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess it's this notion of a culture of inclusion and really defining it. There's a call to action. What would be your personal call to action, Harry? I might start with you, thinking about the business leaders in the room and in the virtual room that are looking at this and saying, this is too much for me. I'm too worried about inflation and Brexit and so many other things. Can we leave this for another day?
I suppose maybe I'd make two comments. One is just building on your comment about why be part of a collective. When we went through the process of pulling together our gender pay gap report, there was a big question as to whether we would include partner data, because partners aren't employees, and actually we could legitimately produce the report without that data in there. And others had done. The impact, and it was tapping into peers of mine in the industry that helped us get to conclude that we should include that data. And doing that has had a massive impact in how the report has landed with our people and how people have engaged with it. The relationship, I think, between employer and employee has transformed in the last 2 years through the pandemic. And this is one way, I think, of demonstrating as an employer that we have an open and inclusive environment where we want to ensure that we are engaging with our people on topics that are relevant and important to them in a way that is clear and transparent to them. Because I think if we don't, that is the future. That is their future. To Sinead's earlier point, employees don't just want to know, for example, what's Viola's point of view on the climate crisis. They want to know what Sinead's point of view on it is. This is really, really important. Yes. We need a perspective, and we need to be equipped with that perspective, and our actions need to follow our words. So that would be the kind of key thing for me. Number one, which is that employee experience and linking with the peers. And I think the second thing as a call to action is just get the data. It's really important. And our practical experience is that once we shared with our people what we wanted to use the data for, they were very happy to provide the data, which they do on a voluntary basis. Sure. But provided that they see us trying to use it to educate, equip and inform ourselves as to how we will take action to support them being successful in their careers, they have been very positive about that.
Super. Sinead, what would be your personal call to action to the leaders?
My personal call to action to everyone in this room is when you go back to your organisations, think about what you're doing. Think about your structures, your processes. Are you inhibiting people getting to the table for interview? Are we letting conversations that shouldn't be happening? It doesn't matter where you are in your inclusive journey. If you're a long way down or you haven't started, everyone start now. One small step, if we all took a small step, we'd have a huge impact. So that's my call to action, is really everybody take yourselves out of your comfort zone, challenge what is not right, and together the benefits for society and organisations are immense.
Absolutely. No, very, very well said. So that's the first part, but before we leave the stage, I want to publicly acknowledge Sinead and Harry, because the your personal commitment and the support of your organizations is enormous, and it means a lot to business in the community and obviously to the whole subgroup, and we'll be celebrating and acknowledging them later, but I want to personally thank you because it is fundamental to have that CEO drive and that CEO leadership, so thank you for that. And okay, so maybe it's time to see the data. So I will hand over now to my colleague Linda O'Sullivan, who will drive us through what have we found on this first inaugural report. Thanks, Sinead and Harry.
Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, thank you Thomas. You'll be glad to know I'm not going to bore you to tears with a whole lot of data. We have tons of it, and we're looking forward to really getting into it in a deep way with the signatories, because there's lots and lots of insights there and learnings. And I came up with the phrase in the middle of it saying, no data is data, you know, it's telling us something. So there's an awful lot of insights that we have developed through this initial process. But on behalf of the 52 signatories of the Elevate Inclusive Workplace Pledge, I'm just so pleased to be standing here today as we present our inaugural annual report. It's a baseline, and we've said that already. It's a starting point. It's how we are going to track our progress against all of our activities on inclusion over the next number of years. So as you know, our vision for Elevate is that we will build a workforce that reflects our society. And for us, the absolute starting point in that is having an understanding of what the diversity profile looks like for our collective workforce, but also for each of you within your own organisation. If you don't have that understanding, how can you say with confidence that your workforce is reflecting the community that you're serving or your customer base? How can you say with confidence that all colleagues have an equal access to opportunity within the organisation? How can you even say that all of your colleagues believe what you say about inclusion? Is there a perception gap out there? So having that data, as the panel have just said, is absolutely critical to just informing all of the action that you're going to take. So I think we scared the living daylights out of our signatories when we first sent them our data collection template, and they thought, oh my God, it's real. They actually want us to do this. And for some of you, it was, you know, you've already started and you're well advanced. But for others, it was the first time that you started looking at diversity data in this way. I've thrown up a slide there just to show you the data points. We asked for 14 different data points. We split them between indicators of diversity and descriptor data. We didn't make anything mandatory in this first year because we wanted to encourage all of the signatories to provide data in whatever way they could, in as complete a way as they could, and to learn from the experience of trying to gather that data. But the reason we asked for the diversity descriptors, so things like gender and age, are because we know that these characteristics, you know, impact on our access to opportunity. We know that most employers are, at the very least, will have our biological gender and our date of birth on their HR systems. So starting to build a diversity profile with those two indicators should be relatively straightforward for most companies. But also we wanted to look at the more protected characteristics. So like disability, like ethnicity, like sexual orientation. We know a lot of you have started that process and started to look at gathering that data. And we wanted to just have that line in the sand that really, if you haven't already, you need to start thinking about gathering that data. And then we also brought in the descriptors, so things like organisational level, salary band, terms of employment. And again, as I say, we didn't make it mandatory, but we wanted to bring those descriptors in to just bring a little bit of richness to the data, So, I mean, you might look at your organisation and say, we're doing great. We've a 50-50 split of gender. But as you start looking up the organisation hierarchy, well, is that split still so equal or not? And so we wanted to be able to slice and dice the data, I suppose. And again, that's given us some really good insights that we will be sharing directly with the signatories as we try and build out for future years. As I said, I'm not going to go through all of the data with you, but I did want to just pull out a couple of things. Gender and age were the two kind of, look, let's start there, we can all do something on this. And so when we looked at our gender split at organisational level, and we asked the signatories to group across four simple organisational levels from entry up to exec and C-suite. And this graph that you can see shows the split. So at entry level, we're actually pretty much bang on with the labour force participation at about 53 to 47. And you can see as we go up the organisation, that decreases, but actually not hugely, which is kind of heartening. I have to say now, in some ways we'll say it's not surprising. Look, we're preaching to the converted. All of the signatories are really well vested in this agenda and have started working on it. So, we would expect to see progress on gender. We know it's the starting point for diversity and inclusion for the majority of our signatories. We know it's still the primary focus in setting targets for all of our signatories. So we would expect to see progress here. But I do think it's heartening that we are seeing that representation. When we compare it to national statistics, the CSO published the most recent gender balance in business. They had 30% of exec positions were held by females. Our data set of 120,000 employees across the 52 signatories is showing almost 39%, which is just fantastic. So there's a couple of questions, as always, when you get data, it poses maybe more questions than answers. But, we can see from that, if we start measuring on data, if we start on gender, we start setting targets, we start seeing progress. But also, progress is slow. So are we doing enough? Are we going quick enough? And what lessons can we take from gender and bring to other dimensions of diversity? The other quick point, sorry, that's how we're doing. We're doing so well against the national average. The other quick point I just wanted to make was on age. And one of the insights that we saw from the age section was that most signatories talk about age as being one of the dimensions of diversity that their strategy covers, but actually very few have started really proactively looking at strategies that will mitigate the risks associated with an ageing workforce. And this is going to become increasingly important as we know our workforce is ageing, we're all working longer. So that's going to become something of focus, I think, over the coming years. So the data is on the one side, and over the next number of years, we are committing to really work with our signatories to enhance that data, to enhance the disclosure rates, to work with you, to support you as you look at voluntary disclosure initiatives and build up that profile for the workforce. But the data is only one part of it. We talked about the collective there earlier, and it's one of the things that I suppose I most love about working for business in the community. We're a convener, and the power of our network is just so strong. And over the last while, in parallel, as we were collecting the data, we also invited signatories to tell us, look, what's working for you, what's not working for you. And the amount of information that we got back, the wealth of experience that is there amongst our signatories is just, it's phenomenal. And we were able to distill a lot of that into the report. And so we have a whole section which hopefully you'll find is a practical guide to cultivating an inclusive culture within your organisations. And we have just, there's an awful lot of tips in there for companies. So that's really powerful. So in parallel, we've the data, but we've the insights as well and the experiences. So I don't want to talk anymore. about the report itself, because I know you're all dying to read it at your leisure. It's on our website now. But I did want to bring up, we have a fantastic set of guest speakers, and I'd like to invite them to the stage now. We have Chedu Piba, Diversity and Inclusion Manager with Sky Ireland. We've Kevin Thompson, CEO of RSA Insurance. And we have Paulina Wysosha, who is the chair of the Multicultural Employee Network Group at Bank of Ireland. And we will be joined virtually by Aidan O'Brien in Janssen. And I'll go to Aidan in just a few moments, but you're all very welcome. Kevin, I'm going to start with you because we finished the last panel when we were talking about leadership and the importance of leadership on this agenda. And I know it's something that you're personally passionate about, but also that's kind of embedded within RSA Insurance. So maybe you talk to us a little bit about your motivation.
No, sure. I think our two previous speakers talked about the importance of leading from the top, and I can't echo that any more than what they have done. But I can maybe talk to my own life experiences in terms of what drives my passion in terms of leading our RSA and our 123 business. I suppose there's two moments. One recent when I was a young CEO, relatively young CEO on my first posting, and we actually partnered with business in the community. And we partnered with them to help an all-girls deaf school in Dublin. And what I did was at the time was I had to get my management team, which was a bit of an uphill struggle at the time, to mentor and partner this group of fifth-year girls. And it worked really, really well. But not a life-changing moment, but the eureka moment for me was I decided at one point, I said, for one of our board meetings, we will bring this group of girls in to sit round and watch a board meeting in action. And then it all went really well, and they followed the discussion. We left the room, and they came out afterwards, and three of the girls walked up to me and said, "We can do that." These are individuals that would have never thought that was within their reach. But we had to open the door, and we had to show them the opportunity that was there. And that kind of resonated with me from my own life experience when I grew up as a young lad in Limerick, and grew up in an area which had a great community spirit, but actually had a lot of social and economic challenges. And what I experienced growing up, which I probably know better now, is unconscious bias. I didn't know it at the time, but it was. But actually, equally what was better was I encountered people through my career who were prepared to open the door and see me for who I was. And I'm a product of that now. But that would not have happened unless there was leaders at all levels within the business prepared to do that and to outweigh bias. So I was lucky as that. So for me, I'm passionate. I'm passionate about social inclusion. And if you walk around the floor within RSA, and we talk about D&I, it's a core part of our strategy. It's a core part of what we measure. And when we measure it, everyone has a KPI against it. Not to beat people down, but to build awareness. And he talked about data earlier, and we'll talk a bit more about it. But I have a firm belief here is that the more data you put out there, the more transparent it becomes. And if you build transparency, you build trust. And that gives you the loop back into the right culture that you need to achieve. So I'm very passionate about it. We drive it really hard in RSA and 123. But I can't take the credit. We have fabulous people, fabulous managers at all levels who actually take ownership and are really passionate about it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I think that idea of people being able to look past the bias and see you for who you are is just, that's what we all want, isn't it? We all want to work in an organisation like that. But I'm glad you brought up the data again. I love data, by the way. But Chedu, I'm going to come to you now because I have to tell you, star performer Sky Ireland, their data set was just fantastic. And I think, Chedu, it's fair to say that they could have provided us more information. So one of the things we want to look at in the future is like socioeconomic status, and that it's something that Sky Ireland are already looking at. But I think you had rates of something like between 80 and 90% disclosure rate across their employee base. So, Chedu, I know everybody in the room is dying to know. What is the secret?
Yeah, thanks, Linda. We're really proud of that achievement. I think for us, I think we've spoken around the importance of having data, and then obviously making sure that we have the confidence of our people who are sharing that data with us. So it was really important for Sky to create a structured approach to how we get that data from our people. And then I think very important as well was to ensure that we had a dedicated resource. So fortunately, that's part of my remit. My role was created to ensure that I drive inclusion and obviously declaration of our diversity data. So in terms of our approach, we actually worked very closely with our senior leaders. We obviously needed the buy-in of the senior leaders to ensure that they kept the Sky declaration campaign top of the agenda. It was always on their business updates. They were always verbal about it, making sure that over the 3-month period where we went gung-ho trying to get our figures up, they kept it on the business updates. They also created a space. So another key stakeholder that we worked with and really, really powerful was our employee networks. I think most people refer to them as IRGs, but essentially we were giving them that opportunity to actually be empowered enough to have that connection with our senior leadership, whilst also making sure that they actually were the trusted people tapping into our communities. So we managed to obviously get to the communities that we needed to engage in getting our targets and of disclosure up. And then finally, our diversity action group. So our diversity action group essentially are the neutral members who are essentially the face of the campaign. And their job essentially was to go into different areas of the business and obviously present to those communities and to our people the benefits of why we actually collect that data, and obviously raise awareness on how we actually use the data, and obviously how practical examples of how it's actually benefited the business. And all the while underpinned by a very strong comms plan. So we actually set out a target at the start. Our goal was to reduce our unknown figure from 30%. And essentially we're giving ourselves 3 months, and we're giving regular updates on a weekly basis to let every area of the business know where they are. The result of which is that outstanding figure that we have, and we currently are driving and maintaining that figure as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I think we might go back to you, Chedu, to do a masterclass at some point, because I think there's lots of great learnings there for companies. And what I would say is, if one company can do it, you all can do it. So that's our call to action for future. But Chedu, you mentioned ERGs, or employee resource groups, and Paulina, I want to just bring you in on that because you chair Bank of Ireland's multicultural network. Before I just ask you about that, I know you're not involved in the declaration campaign in Bank of Ireland, but it is something that you've been doing for the last number of years, and the Bank of Ireland data set was pretty impressive too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not directly involved in data profiling in Bank of Ireland, but I am very much, being a coach of the network, I'm very much aware of the strategy and what we are trying to achieve and how we're going to do it. So our ambition in the inclusion diversity is to build the organization, or help build the organization that represents the society that the Bank of Ireland serves, and the society that is constantly changing. So to be welcoming to all and have that diverse workforce. So in order to do that, and something that Chedu were talking about, it's very important to have the transparency and answering the question why. So once you know that, then the people will have that disclosures with you. So Bank of Ireland's I&D strategy is data driven. So I'm very much aware that in 2018, for example, Bank of Ireland was the first on the market that targets 50-50 in gender balance. In 2020, Bank of Ireland issued a report on the pay gap, and that was ahead of legislation. And in 2020 as well, we've started it's called SAP Self-ID campaign, whereby we are talking to our colleagues and trying to encourage them to give us that data. And then again, coming back to your point, Chad, they're trying to explain why are we doing that. And in order for us to be able to understand our workforce, to be able to put some actions in place, we have to have that data. And then once we have that, we can make a decision as to where do we want to go and how are we going to get there. I'm very much aware as well that we report on the progress, on the measures. So something that, Kevin, you were talking about, it's very important to measure the progress, and that's what we do. We have an IND dashboard that is reported to GEC and to the board, and we have that discussions all the time. So we are on the right path in relation to that. We are not as high as Chadu is in terms of the disclosure rates, but we are going in the right direction, and it's hopefully we'll get that very soon when we meet again. It's a journey. It is a journey.
And just if we go to the multicultural network, because I know there's an awful lot going on, and you link very much the activity of those networks with your strategies. Maybe just give us a sense of the type of activities that you're engaged in.
Yeah, so I don't know how many companies, probably most of the companies have the employee resource group. So multicultural network that I am co-chair of is the employee resource group. Within that group, we have colleagues from across the organization that are coming together because we share same values and we have the same life experiences. Within the Bank of Ireland, we have 6 networks with a very similar structure. So we have multicultural, which I'm, and then we have a gender balance, we have accessibility, we have the With Pride network, what else, parents and carers. So we have all that networks and we all collaborate, work together. The networks are very structured. We all have a chair of the network, then we have a GEC and a HR director sponsor who are working with us. So this is coming back, Chad, to your point that it's so important to have that buy-in from the top. But also we work together, great, and we invite people to join the network. So having those employee resource group within the organization help the organization itself, because people have that sense of belonging, which is probably very, very important. If you have colleagues within the organization that share the same values or have the same life experiences, you can create that environment when you support each other, when you feel that you belong, when you can work on personal developments, career developments. So employee resources group, for example, another part of that from the totally business perspective is that if you have employee resource group within your organization, it will actually help you to reach out to your diverse customers or diverse suppliers. Give an example, our Indian and Polish colleagues from the network are helping to help Polish and Indian customers who are trying to buy a new house in Ireland. Yeah. So trying to build and think about it a big broadly. So even though sometimes we're talking up on the top-down approach in terms of the IND, I think it's really, really important to probably have a look of this bottom-up, because you can get a lot of insight and lots of support, and overall all that is leading to the better business performance.
Sure, and I earlier on, I think Sinead mentioned it about the banter that goes on and
yes.
Small steps, and I think you had some good examples
yes, of the
everyday acts of inclusion.
Yes. So again, and this is coming back to the point that when we were coming as a colleagues, and the beauty about our employee resource group is that we leave our badge outside. So it doesn't matter if you are a senior leader or if you are on the bottom. We are all equal there, and we all have those conversations. So, for example, what's happened is there's 2 very simple initiatives. One of them is Say My Name. You would probably all agree that your name is your identity, and it's very important to respect that. But what we found when we listened to our colleagues is that there's so many times that people's name being mispronounced. And it's not only about foreign people having their name mispronounced. It's equally with Irish colleagues, because we all have those different names. I remember when I came to Ireland first, and I was looking, and there was a name that I couldn't really pronounce, which was Cuiva. And I was like, how can you actually say Cuiva? so things like that, but equally that, and our workforce is changing all the time. So we have people who are coming from abroad, but equally they need to communicate with the Irish colleagues. So again, very simple initiatives. What we are doing at the moment is we are allowing our colleagues to have their phonetic pronunciation on the email. So I've sent that to you, Linda, and I know that you're like, oh, geez, I know I don't have to ask you how to pronounce your surname, because it's there written for you. And equally, that's also with the Irish colleagues. So that's the one. The other one that came, again, from very deep listening to our colleagues is we created everyday acts of inclusion, which we call it. It's a very simple document. It's 1 page or 2 pages. Colleagues were coming in to us and saying, Jesus, we know this is happening. We really want to be part of this. We know that the culture is changing, but where will I start? I don't even know. So based on that, we have created that document, which is, I'd say 30 maybe very simple steps that every single one of us can do to be more inclusive. So then it's coming back to the accountability again, that we are accountable for our IND. So it's not only a senior leaders, it's not only employee networks. Every single person in the organization can have those small little actions that creates that inclusive culture within the organization. So that's very simple but very powerful.
That inclusive culture as well is that inclusion is not about those people over there. It's about all of us and how all of us engage on a day-to-day basis. I think we might bring in Aidan if Aidan is standing by. One of the things, Paulina, just while we're waiting on Aidan, that I really liked about that Say My Name, yes. And it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about the biases, or you might not ask somebody to contribute in a meeting because you're worried you'll get their name wrong. And what a simple act of exclusion that you have actually never even thought about. Yeah. So it's all of these, but it's when you start being really mindful about inclusion that you start thinking about things like that.
It's just listening to people, just really deep listening to what are people trying to say. Yeah.
Aidan, can you hear us?
Good morning, Linda.
How are you? Full marks to anybody who has identified that Aidan is coming live to us from Ringaskiddy in the beautiful County Cork. Aidan, you're very welcome. So just to introduce you, Aidan is Senior Operations Manager at Janssen Sciences Ireland. It's part of the J&J group. But he also is chair of the Alliance for Diverse Abilities in Janssen. So Aidan, I just wanted to bring you in on that, but maybe just to start us off, Johnson & Johnson, diversity, equity, inclusion, it's been part of your culture for a long number of years. I know that. So how does that translate to kind of the day-to-day interactions of colleagues?
Yeah, look, thanks, Linda, and good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be part of this conversation here this morning. In J&J, our credo outlines our responsibility to create an inclusive environment and respect the dignity and diversity of all people. And this is woven into how we do business every day. Here in Ireland, we have a diverse workforce of, I think, more than 5,000 people now in 10 sites across 5 counties. And all these employees are empowered to participate in active DEI dialogue and action. DEI is everybody's responsibility, and I suppose an example of that is our people managers. They all have a DEI goal to which they're held accountable to.
And that's similar, Kevin, you mentioned the DEI goals as well, and kind of building that in for individual people as well, and having everybody be held accountable. But Aidan, if I could just ask you specifically on the Alliance for Diverse Abilities, which I really like the title of, by the way. Just tell me a little bit before you tell us what it is, about your motivation for how did you get involved in that particular network group?
I suppose kind of a personal story in some respects. Look, I'm a parent of a son with an acquired brain injury, so I have a particular interest in how we as organisations are and what we're doing to create an inclusive workforce. I suppose, look, I coach wheelchair basketball, and like I've met numerous disabled athletes over the years, and look, it's really opened my eyes to the contributions that these individuals can make when given a chance. But I suppose, like, as a parent, like we always carry worry, and I worried, like, who's going to employ my son or his teammates? Like, who's going to give them a chance to belong, to use the phrase already said, like how are they going to belong in an organization? And look, these individuals, they're underrepresented, and ERGs such as the ADA give us the ability to influence that change.
And maybe, Aidan, could you just tell us a little bit about what the ADA actually does?
I can. I'm conscious of time as well, so yeah. I'll give you a brief tour through it. So, look, the Alliance for Diverse Disability, ERG, look, it's running here in Ireland since 2018. It was formed previous to that. Look, it does aim to create a more inclusive work culture for people with diverse abilities and their caregivers. Like in Ireland, we focus on disability, mental health and autism and neurodiversity. And look, it's fundamentally about equal opportunities. We want to create an inclusive and barrier-free environment for people with disabilities and people that are neurodiverse, so that, I suppose, every day each employee at J&J belong and they feel supported and empowered to be themselves. Look, a key part of the overall J&J DEI strategy is a focus on building a workforce that reflects the diversity of the communities that we serve. And like an ADA and our other, like we have other ERGs as well, like they support this strategy. Like I suppose some examples, like we create partnerships with external providers of talent. Speaking of talent earlier on in the conversation this morning, and these support candidates with diverse abilities. And one of these that I can talk about this morning in particular is our partnership with UCC, University College Cork, and their disability support service. We already had a proud kind of pre-existing history of mentoring students in our third level institutions as part of our YSTEM 2D program. And that focused on encouraging female talent to pursue careers in STEM. So we know what mentoring is very impactful, and we decided, I think about 2 years ago now, to bring the same approach to our partnership with the UCC's Disability Support Service. And that service supports students to be better equipped to make a successful transition from college to the workforce. And our mentors encourage these students to focus on their career planning and development, while I suppose in return, like we always get something in return, like the mentoring program does help us to build disability confident hiring managers, because it does provide an opportunity for employers to learn more about disability in a safe environment.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting point, and we love mentoring at Business in the Community, because we know firsthand through our employment and our education programs the power of a mentoring program done well. Everybody benefits. It's two-way. And I think that's a really interesting one about building that disability confidence, because often when we're talking about diverse abilities or diversity, there's a fear there that you'll do the wrong thing, you'll say the wrong thing. So actually building that confidence is really important. And I think, Aidan, one of the things I really liked about your programme and your outreach is that it's very much linked back to your talent acquisition programme. So it's something that we've seen, companies can get engaged in community partnerships, and they sit over here and they're lovely and they're very impactful. And then the talent programs sit over here and there is no communication. But I think that's one of the really nice things about your programme. Is that right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's not just about the mentoring piece. Like I suppose you're building that partnership, and like we've linked that partnership to our summer internship program now. Like this year, I think we had 22 mentorship pairings with mentors from the Cork-based J&J businesses. So like we've Janssen Sciences Ireland, where I'm talking to you from here today, Dupuis Synthèse, who are our neighbours. I was going to say just behind me, but they're very, very close to us, and Janssen Pharmaceutical Sciences, who are across in Little Island. And I suppose we've partnered, and like some of these students now have been offered summer internship placements. And like our experience has been that like this type of partnership is successful. Like it's a great method for early engagement with talent, and we've successfully transitioned a number of candidates kind of through that whole program, and they're currently with us in staff roles within our organization in different functions in quality and manufacturing. And even recently, I suppose, like, we've reached out to UCC with open positions, and we've just recently seen a visually impaired, legally blind graduate take up a role within our manufacturing department. But again, it's due to that access to that talent, and I suppose being able to kind of lean on the partnerships that you make.
No, it's really good, Aidan, and I know there's lots more examples, and we could keep you talking, but I'm very conscious of time, and I'd just like to come back to Chedu just for a moment, just talking about that kind of talent programs or access to diverse talent. I know you introduced, is it the New Horizons program last year to look at maybe underrepresented groups within the workplace?
Indeed, we did. I think just to touch on what Aidan has spoken about, talent retention, I think, for all businesses is really important. And, we know from experience that diverse, and underrepresented groups are probably most impacted when it comes to progression within the workplace. So a focus for Sky, essentially, based on our deep dive and some feedback that we had actually gotten from the employee networks. We've done some focus groups with them to kind of understand what challenges people were having, and a recurring theme was around internal progression, opportunities to go and be placed in a different area of the business without the necessary experience per se. So the New Horizons program was actually created by our senior leaders in collaboration with obviously a few of us running the engine. But essentially they created 11 new roles, which were 9 month secondment. And that was to give, junior entry-level candidates that opportunity to actually be placed in a specialized area where they could actually learn and upskill, with the view that obviously it would help anybody that wanted to progress in their career, but with an understanding as well that people would actually return to their current roles to use that in their day-to-day roles after the 9 months. So we've been very good at kind of partnering these 11 candidates with senior leaders who are mentoring them as well. And I suppose one thing that I should mention is that throughout that process of shortlisting, whilst we did open it up to anybody that was at a junior entry level, we actually made the conscious decision to have a D&I lens on it. So we, in terms of our shortlisting, we always had our diversity action group, who are members, voluntary members of our organization from diverse backgrounds. We actually upskilled them in the recruitment process, and they sat in on the interviews to make sure that we had a balanced panel as well. So we've always maintained a D&I lens on it, and essentially giving people an opportunity to go into a place, upskill, gain the experience, regardless of what their previous talents were, and obviously hiring them on potential. It's a really good rotational program. I think the results, I was looking at them, really, really impressed with them. It wasn't a program intended on placing people permanently into roles, but because of that opportunity for senior leaders to actually see the potential in the junior employees, we've actually got 64% of the people on that program now secured into permanent roles.
Yeah,
so
fantastic.
it's a great way of actually feeding in into identifying, and obviously we've resourced as well in areas that we might have needed a bit of support as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I think it's a really nice example, and I love that phrase, the diversity lens, and I love the fact that you use your diversity action group for different touch points across the business to give that view of different initiatives. I'm very conscious of time, but Kevin, I want to just come to you just on the whole culture piece, because it is the culture within the organisation. I think that's so important.
No, it is. In RSN 123, we have a statement, prepared to make the difference. And we look at our business both from a business perspective, but from a D&I lens. That's our mantra. So to give you, and that feeds into our culture. So if you think about it, like when our chairperson, Emer Daly, She opens the board. First statement she will make is, are we prepared to make a difference here? And that's from a D&I perspective. We will have the D&I lens. And we will close every meeting, both an executive level and at the board meeting, to say, did we actually make a difference here? And then when you kind of tie that to the data, you've got to actually show people the difference you're making. You've got to be transparent around the data you're capturing within the organisation. It comes back to my point about building trust. So for us within RSA, we've been able to show those proof points. We've been able to say that, well, actually now we're at a situation whereby our executive team is 50-50 gender split. The next layer down across all our sites, reporting into the executive team, it's gender-led at 53%. And so the pyramid is actually inverted for us in that way. And then we also show our proof points in terms of prepared to make the difference, in terms of training and the time that we're prepared to put in ourselves to make things happen, such as all our board, all our executive, all our team leaders, unconscious bias training. We do it. You have to do it. And if you don't do it, there's a question asked, well, why aren't you doing it?
Right.
So it's fundamental, but it ties back to an organisation's values then. So one of our big values that we have is generosity. So it's our generosity in terms of the time that we'll give each other within the business to help each other. And it's the time that we will give to our customers. It's the time that we will give to probably minority groups, give them opportunities. And hence when you look at programs that we're aligned to now, such as Business Community, the EPIC program, asylum seekers, we see that as a huge opportunity for our business in terms of sourcing talent. And I know I was talked earlier about the shortage of talent pool within our country, and we're all fighting for it. We just have to broaden our mind. So we look at things through that lens, prepared to make a difference. And it's a little incremental things. When you add them together, as we know, that's what moves the dial.
Yeah.
And that's the culture we try and bring within the organisation, both within RSA and 123.
No, it's great. As I say, I'm conscious of time. I think we were quite ambitious in that we had 4 excellent contributors, and I have to say there's many more from across the signatory network, and we really look forward to sharing some of the examples. But I'd just like to open it up to the floor just for a minute. Would anybody like to ask a question of any of our panellists? If you would like to. Yeah.
Sorry, I've got a really probably quite boring.
Could I ask you now to do something that you probably will hate? Could I just ask you to stand up at that microphone over there, just for the benefit of the people not in the room? Oh, here. Even better.
I'm Susie. I'm here with Karen Holmes. I've just got a really boring practical question for you, Jedu. It's around when you went to collect the data, did you have something set up in-house, or did you have a software? How did you, in a continuous way, have people engage and contribute their data? Were they going onto the normal HR portal, or was there something specific for this task?
Thank you for the question. It's not boring at all. I love anything around diversity data. I suppose to answer your question, we obviously have our HR system, which is where we collect all data, but for this specific purpose of the campaign, we obviously had to try and make it look fun, attractive. I think data generally isn't attractive. And so we put together, in that kind of comms plan, we put together kind of snapshots, practical snapshots of step-by-step guide as to how to upload the information. But we also included some animations to kind of speak to why that declaration is important to the business. So a combination of a couple of things, and obviously the fun side as well with our diversity action group. I can never give them enough credit. They were at the forefront of obviously making sure that it was really engaging as well.
I think it's something, Susie, that we look to do, putting kind of a tip sheet, a guide together for our signatories to really support that, because it's something that we're very keen on. Yeah. Now, we're obviously in a hybrid event, so I would like to now take a question from the virtual audience, and Lorraine O'Toole, my colleague, is going to just read it out for us there. Yeah, so Lorraine.
The question we've had from the virtual audience is, how do you bring the cynics or the non-believers with you on this inclusion journey?
Now.
Maybe I'm happy to take that one. I think it comes back to the transparency piece again. I think I think you might have called it out earlier, in that you do have to call things out. So you've got to be transparent about what you're achieving, and more importantly, what you're not achieving and where you want to get to. But equally, as you're taking that journey, you have to create an environment whereby, I suppose, people know, for want of a better expression, what's acceptable or not. And what I have found as we've taken this journey within RSA is that you do have cynics, there's no doubt about it, and people are stuck in their ways and they don't want to change. But actually the force of good overcomes that in time. Once you get momentum within the organisation and people see the benefits of it, and ultimately people are rewarded. Because if I'm looking for leaders within my business, I'm looking for leaders who've got a strong D&I lens, who are inclusive in their approach. So ultimately, your cream rises to the top.
Yeah.
I think you just got to meet it head on, but in a very transparent and open way.
I like it. Meet it head on in a very transparent way. It's perfect. So look, I'm not going to, if you have questions, I'd encourage you all, just send them to us. Any questions that you have, anything that you've heard today that you'd like to hear more on, just do get in touch. As I say, we've just got so much information at the moment and so many insights, and we're only dying to share them with people, because this is what we're about. It's about all boats rising together and us all learning from each other. Before I hand back to Thomas, 10 seconds or less, your top, most impactful thing you did last year on inclusion. Who wants to start?
I don't mind going first. I think for us, at the core of everything, and I know we've spoken about it, data is everything. And I think for me, that is very, very much still the most, what I'm most proud of. Because obviously it's continuous. We're always getting people in, so we're always continuously having to drive declaration rates. So really proud to maintain that high level.
Brilliant. Kevin?
I think for us, was one project we did was we partnered with the Trinity Centre for People with Intellectual Disabilities, where we took interns into our business. And I can honestly say the contribution that they made to our business and how they changed our thinking within the business was just brilliant. It really, really was. And we were proud of the fact as well of those interns that came in and spent time with us. It prepared them to go on and actually get full-time jobs.
Brilliant, yeah.
So it was really rewarding.
Paulina?
For us would be last year we've launched the Ethnic Minority Development Program in collaboration with Involve. Again, fantastic. It was to build that ethnic minority talent and then retention, obviously, and the attraction. It was very important. So that would be the one. But the second one that we are very proud of was ethnic minority reverse or mentoring program that we have, and we are so people from the ethnic minority backgrounds, they are being mentored or by the board members and the GEC. So it's great to have that relationship, and that is continuously going. And that's a two-way, absolutely. Yeah. So it's not only, it's reverse mentoring, and it's very beneficial. So and I think we started that in January last year, and it continues all the time. Yeah.
And Aidan, I'm going to give you the last word if you're still with us there. Most impactful thing you did last year?
I'm still online. I'm thinking about the mentoring program as well. I think not only with UCC, but we did one with transition year students in the NCBI, and that kind of reverse mentorship possibility that it offers to hiring managers to build that disability confidence. And I think the proud element then was actually seeing our visually impaired colleagues start with us, and I think out of small acorns grow mighty oaks, and like that is absolutely an example of where, mentoring 15 and 16-year-old TY students with the NCBI, kind of partnering with UCC, and then it had this huge impact on this one individual. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to have an impact on individuals.
Fantastic. Thank you, Aidan. I want to thank you all. Thank you, Aidan in Cork. Thank you, Chedu. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Paulina. Really appreciate your time and your insights today. And Thomas, we'll hand back over.
Okay, so quite an energizing morning, and what a superb panel, and I've written so many things. But before we go any further, I would like to give a special appreciation to my colleagues that are running this, because it's not easy getting 52 of you to send us all your data sets and sitting down with us and being interrogated left, right and center. And it takes a lot of work, and I'm sure it's taking a lot of late hours. So I want to give a special recognition to Richa Tyagi, to Louise Murray and to Linda O'Sullivan, who are the brain and the heart and the soul behind the Elevate initiative at Business in the Community Ireland, and it's something we're very, very invested. I'm very glad, Kevin, that you spoke about our program partnering DESH schools with businesses, because this is all about that continuum, isn't it, between education and unemployment. And for 20 years we have been working on the world of education and how that leads into employment. And also I'm glad that Kevin mentioned our EPIC program, which is one of our initiatives supporting asylum seekers, refugees and migrants get into employment. Last year we were incredibly excited when the Community Foundation for Ireland came to us and secured 3-year funding for a traveller employment programme. And that programme is now a reality, and I'm glad that we have a few minutes to talk about it. And I'm joined by my 2 colleagues that are running this initiative, Lindsay O'Neill and Anne-Marie MacDonald. And I want to take a few minutes just to understand what is it that we're going to do. So Anne-Marie, I might start with you.
Okay.
Why do we need a traveller employment programme?
Well, hello everybody. I'm Anne-Marie. So I suppose I'll start by saying it's extremely hard for travellers to gain employment, and once if they do gain employment, also for them to stay within it. So this comes down to various different reasons, but the main one being the discrimination and exclusion that travellers face within the employment sector. Discrimination can be based on anything from being discriminated against for their name, their address, appearance, way of speaking, language, cultural differences. So for many of these reasons, this is why a lot of travellers tend to hide their identity when applying for employment. And for most cases, for when they're attending interviews, on their CVs, and a big one as well, also when they actually do gain employment, a lot of them still hide their identity when they're in employment. This part for myself resonates because I find it quite sad. As a traveller myself, I know a lot of travellers that are in employment and some business owners as well, and they're really respected and valued for the work they do. They're respected and valued by their co-workers and by their employers. But unfortunately, it's they're not being valued and respected as themselves because they hide their identity all the while they're doing their good work. Because they're great workers and they're valued as for the work they do. But it's just so sad that they can't be themselves while they're doing the work that they're doing. This is a reason as well why a lot of travellers tend to want to work in traveller-specific organisations. There's a lot of great traveller organisations out there, and a lot of travellers tend to want to go there and work in them because going in the door, they're going in completely as themselves. They don't have to alter or change anything about themselves, and they're going in just being who they are and acting as themselves. So I suppose this is why the programme is so important to myself and Lindsay. We're there to encourage and to help and support travellers that want to gain employment, to be able to go in as themselves, have the confidence to apply for work that they're interested in and areas of work that they're interested in. And we're there to help and to support and to encourage them to go in and to be their best selves and to be open and honest about who they are.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think there's some really harsh statistics that back what you're saying, Anne-Marie. Lindsay, last year you showed me some St. Stephen's Green Trust statistics. We all know that the level of unemployment in the traveller community is around 80%. We all know a recent survey was indicating that something around 83% of Irish business said they would not employ a traveller. And something around 75% of people said I would not have a traveller friend. And some of you can see some of those statistics there. So I don't need to say anything further about the business case and about the motivation. So clearly, it is something that needs to change. And the great thing is that we have the power of business to make an impact on that. So Lindsay, you might tell us what's going to practically happen and how we're going to use all your expertise and experience in supporting other cohorts to get into employment through this traveller programme.
Yep, so morning everyone. Yeah, we are very hopeful that the Traveller Employment Programme is going to take a step towards tackling this underemployment. At the moment, Anne-Marie and I are reaching out and meeting up with local and national travel organisations to start trying to meet with participants. So if you're over 18 and from a traveller background and are keen either to have a career change or to start your career, give us a call. There is a stat there, I think like 66% of people from a traveller background engage in training programs and education, so there is like a want there, but only of those 30% go into employment, so there is that gap. The model that we are going to use will similar to EPIC and Employability, Women at Work, the other programs. So we'll be providing one-to-one career guidance, job seeking skills, group workshops, hopefully business-led workshops as well. And a key bit will be in employment support as well. So helping people to, I suppose, secure employment and then to maintain that will be a big part of it. Like Tomas mentioned the stats there, like they're shocking, you know, in terms of calling things out that Kevin mentioned, and Sinead earlier talked about microaggressions and things. Like 85% of people say they wouldn't be friends with a traveller. Like if there's a row of 10 people, like kind of me, you're in a row of 10 people there, you know, 9 people wouldn't be your friend, you know, 8 people wouldn't employ you. Being a job seeker, I think, is hard enough without this added, massively added block. 6 times more likely to experience unemployment, 10 times more likely to experience discrimination. The Stevens Green Trust that you mentioned, they have spoken a lot with travellers in employment and who are getting on well, and I suppose they cited the organisational culture as a key part of that. So where there is kind of positive line managers, a family-friendly ethos, a kind of teamwork, collaborative approach, where they're respected, which are kind of, I suppose, basics probably that every organisation really should have. But on top of that, to not just to kind of, I suppose, deliver anti-racism training and unconscious bias training, but also, I suppose, to tackle things like microaggressions, which are experienced, and everyday racism, which is experienced so much by members of the travelling community, and a lot of the time is accepted. You know, it's not banter. You know, it's just completely unacceptable language that people are using, remarks that people are making. And a lot of the time it's just let slide because it's just become part of day-to-day language that people use. So what we are doing now is, I suppose, we are asking companies as well, you know, we would be more than happy to come out and speak with D&I teams, HR teams as well. We feel that you know, supported employment and inclusive workplaces can be a real vehicle for, I suppose, tackling underemployment of travellers, but also, you know, general how the racism within the wider community as well. And I suppose that's what Anne-Marie and I are hoping to do in a nutshell.
Which is absolutely fantastic, and I think we're all very excited and nervous. Let's be honest, but very much looking forward to seeing those results crystallizing, and I think the call to action for all the businesses in the room is very clear. So we will be talking to you and sharing more information with you about the program and how it can work. So thank you, Anne-Marie, and thank you, Lindsay, for sharing that. And I'm going to bring this event now to a close. You have been very patient and graceful audience, especially those of you online and those of you who are here with us. And I hope you'll have a chance to stay, for those of you who are in the room, to have some refreshments afterwards. A lot of things to say. Well, it's every time, I don't know what it is about inclusion and diversity, but every time we have events like this, they're quite emotional. I don't know why we don't get that when we talk about low carbon, but I'm sure we will get there. And hey, listening, Professor John Sweeney on the radio this morning was, he made it quite emotional as well. And obviously on the 23rd of June, there's another appointment in your diaries, which is going to be the launch of our annual low carbon pledge report. So a whole other dimension of that journey to be a responsible business. We've mentioned so many things in terms of the role of leadership, the importance of data, very simple initiatives like say my name. What a wonderful initiative. How we need to start right now. We don't need to wait anymore. How this is not just a question of your own company and the four walls. It's your suppliers. It's your community at large. You need to work with your industry sectors, because many of the solutions, whether it's in the construction industry or in transport or in retail, are going to be within those sectors that you're working. Accountability, transparency, and I'm sure none of those words are strange to you. Leadership. And I'm delighted that there are CEOs in the room and in the virtual room with us, driving this agenda for us. So yes, this is a baseline, and we need to keep on working on the data. The call to action is very clear. This is about building a culture, and you don't build a culture of inclusion putting up a pride flag in the month of June and organizing a breakfast for International Women's Day. You had something that you built every single day. It's about empowering people. So I'm glad to see you're nodding. So we're on the same wavelength. I don't need to, as Linda said, you're the converted. So I'm not going to say anything more around that. So the final thing to say is thank you. And the slide there is naming the huge amount of Deloitte colleagues that have been part of this. Harry, thanks for hosting us. Thanks for planting a tree for us. You might tell us where the trees are. We might go and visit them one day, see them grow. So thanks so much to Deloitte for that. Firstly. Secondly, there is a social inclusion subgroup that leads all this huge work that Sinead Patton and Harry Goddard lead on, and you can see their names there on the screen, and they have been supporting us for many years, and they have been active participants in this initiative for many years. Thanks to the 52 signatories and counting that are part of Elevate, and for the role that you're playing, because it's fundamental. And obviously, thank you for the audience for joining us. And finally, just one more thanks to my colleagues, and I particularly want to name out at the very back of the room, Natalie Pavone, Christina Florescu, and Lorraine Wall, who is somewhere running around making sure that this event is run as smoothly as it is. The production team there on the right that made a great job this morning, and hopefully there will be much more of this to come. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was a nice use of your morning, rather than being in front of all those Zoom calls. So thank you very much, and do stay with us for some refreshments.